Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Looks Like We Made It. I'm Izzy Howell and I'm joined by my dad Chris to talk all things video marketing. We are the father and daughter who run the fabulous video production company Howell Film, and each week we will be discussing everything like what happens behind the scenes on our projects, getting results from your video content, how to start using video in your business, and plenty more to come. We will be joined by some wonderful special guests, including our own awesome clients from all kinds of industries, as well as our own film crew and even our own family to candidly converse about creativity. On this episode, we are answering the question, is making a film all about a nice camera? And to help us answer this question, we are joined by Andy Roughan, filmmaker extraordinaire, lead filmmaker for Howell Film, and generally wonderful person. So without further ado, let's get started. And of course, never miss an episode every Tuesday by giving us a follow or subscribe, as well as finding Howell Film on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Let's go.
Excellent.
Okay. Happy with that? Hello, Andy.
Hello.
Hi, Andy.
Andy, so you are here today to help us answer the question, is making a film all about a nice camera? But first, do you want to introduce yourself to all of our massive audience of listeners?
Yeah, so I am Andy Roughan. I am a filmmaker and have been a filmmaker for pretty much the past decade now. And, you know, I've worked on various productions in scale from things, you know, ranging from working for the BBC to, you know, kind of more drama series and things like that. So it's kind of the broad scope. And then I've also completed work, obviously, in the kind of the corporate sector, but also with you guys as well, doing projects over in some really exciting places.
Andy, the brilliant Geordie filmmaker. Mm-hmm. Do you need an expensive camera to make a brilliant film?
Yes. No, of course not. No. Look, I can only speak from my own experience of where I guess I began using kind of cheap DSLRs. This was a bit before, I guess, what you would call the iPhone revolution, which was when obviously the capabilities of phones became as amazing as they are now. So my own experience was starting with, you know, kind of digital single lens reflex cameras and filming on those, which was kind of where I got my experience. And you know, nowadays we're living in this incredible time where you can basically take an iPhone and obviously people have done and shot things ranging from commercials to feature films. So you have the technology you need in your pockets to film. Obviously, this does, you know, raise the question of how do I use this technology to my benefit? How do I kind of take you know, all of the skills of an industry that's kind of existed for the last 100 years and bring that to a phone to film something? That's an entirely different question, because then we go into things like technique and media training. But where it all kind of begins is, do you need an expensive camera? Absolutely not.
Okay.
So how come we've invested tens of thousands of pounds on expensive cameras and lenses, etc., when we could have just bought a couple hundred quid's worth of iPhones?
Yeah, what are we doing?
It's a good question, and where the separator line is kind of brought in is whenever you're wanting to push something to a next level, you always want to invest in kit that can basically exceed the phone in your pocket, as it were. Because even though, you know, an iPhone is 4K, you're looking at more things like, not to get too technical and bore you with the details, but we enter a realm of things like dynamic range, 8-bit, 10-bit, 14-bit. more of my kind of like, oh, that's amazing. But really, beyond that, you're looking at tools of the trade. You can build a house with, you know, basic tools, but you wouldn't want to. Do you know what I mean? It becomes a massive factor of that. We also start talking about things like lenses. There's a general rule that what you want is you want more expensive lenses than camera bodies. So your lenses are weirdly almost more important than the camera itself, because that kind of determines the quality of light that enters them and the way the barrels are built. And again, very technical, but this is where we enter this realm of paying lots of money for the expensive kit, because basically you're looking at a sensor effectively at the other end of that lens, which is where that money kind of goes, is to building sensors, whether it's micro four thirds, full frame, you name it. Those sensors are kind of where the money goes. So.
And am I right in saying that as you get further up the scale, you get into a kind of a marginal gains situation, where if you've got a really nice starter kit, got a really nice camera, a couple of nice lenses, a pretty good good understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve, that each incremental step from that point on is potentially like a marginal gain situation, where the difference between a £1,000 camera and a £5,000 camera could be huge, but the difference between a £5,000 camera and an £8,000 camera or a £10,000 camera is less huge, and there's just a few more extra features, perhaps built-in ND filters or whatever it may be. And then when you get up to a kind of a £100,000 camera, you've got to be able to justify that, obviously. But for a sort of a layman user or a new user, the gains there become marginal. Would that be right?
It's difficult to really I guess give a short answer to that, because effectively what you're looking at is the quality of manufacturing. I guess the best way to describe it is arriving in a Ferrari as opposed to arriving in a Fiat Punto. Yeah. So if you
diss the Puntos.
Yeah, no offense to the Punto drivers, but what you get is when you're the higher end cameras, we're talking about your Alexas and your £50,000 camera packages. They effectively are packed full of so much incredible technology, and effectively again we always go back to sensors, but you've got a fantastic sensor in there. You've got the codec that it basically records to, as well as the fact that it is basically effectively built to take on other expensive kit. So expensive is as expensive does. And
sorry to interrupt, and also you've got to know what to do with the damn thing, haven't you?
Yeah.
This is the downside of what I guess the phone, or you can call it, I guess, the iPhone revolution, is the fact that people with maybe more means, should we say financial means, to access the kit will go out and buy, because they have the finances saved to be able to go and buy something like, when it was on the market, the Red One Mysterium X, which when it came out was a hugely expensive camera. We're talking, I think it was about 25 grand when it first came out. And it was, you'd get these people who were like, I'll just jump in, I've never done this before, but I'll just buy a really expensive camera and it'll be fine. And that's just not how it works. Like anything, there's no point having the most expensive expensive brushes as an artist if you've never painted before in your life.
Yeah.
And
Or like I was out on my mountain bike and some guy asked me what compound rubber I was running. I think I'm a fat middle-aged bloke. It doesn't matter, It's just it's at the end of the day, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? It's about knowing you knowing what to do, knowing how to use it, planning how you're going to use it, where the benefit lies. So there's got to be a sweet spot.
Yeah. So a project that we worked on together this year had certain challenges to be met. So obviously one of the key things is understanding where technically cameras sit on the end of the spectrum, so that for example, if which we did, we had basically 4 different cameras effectively running at the same time, which can be a nightmare if you don't know what you're doing in terms of post-production. So that it presents its own kind of challenge. But this became an essential part of it, is because if you don't have the budgets to bring in 5 of the same camera, because you have to then hire and bring in and send, so there's an entire cost there. If you know what you're looking for in terms of profiles, so for example, getting cameras which will record similarly, in terms of codecs, you know how you're going to match them in post, as well as using things which like the old timey tech, I guess, like light meters, which now come in phones to set exposure. Again, it's getting a bit technical, but I guess what I want to kind of push more than anything is that knowing what you can and can't do in technical limitations is the most important thing. So if you are doing something, for example, like a beast camera, and you are a small business with no access to money to get somebody to come and kind of help you do that, because obviously one of the key things when you get a filmmaker to come in and do something like a promo or an interview video, everyone thinks maybe, how do you justify a cost? It's just somebody coming in with a camera, but it's not. We're also there as filmmakers to coach you, to get the best answers out of you, to make sure you look right, to make sure you sound right, to make sure you get the best returns on what you're paying for. Whereas if you do it with your phone, there will be trade-offs. You're probably not, media trained necessarily. You may not know where to look. You may not know, is the environment right? Is the light right? How am I going to edit this? So they're all things to consider when you are approaching it from a technical standpoint. But beyond that, I guess we could talk creatively as well.
Well, I was going to say, thinking back to, 2 things really. I started off in film doing a film studies A-level, where the exam requirements were to make 2 films, 1 each year, and one of those I filmed on an iPod Touch at the time, and that was obviously quite a few years back, but I didn't really at the time consider that I needed, a massive, huge Sony or Blackmagic camera to do that. But I knew I had to basically to tell a story and get a message across, and it was really the first time I'd ever done that. And what we found, particularly during the pandemic, is that a lot of people have had to use their phones and film a lot more because you can't go out. So when we did the Family Business of the Year Awards for both years 2020 and 2021, we had to ask people to submit themselves speaking to a camera, whether it's announcing an award, presenting an award, and lots of people have had to do that for quite big ticket stuff across the world during the pandemic, and that's really become a part of what businesses and people are expected to do in the public eye. So if you're a business person or an entrepreneur or someone who just wants to start making their own videos, and all you've got is your phone, or maybe you've got enough for an entry level DSLR or something, what can that person do to make sure that it looks right and it's not distracting? As an editor, I get really sometimes distracted when something doesn't sound right or isn't lit right and stuff like that. But what are little things people can consider when they're having to not maybe by choice, they're having to create a video on their phone to send to someone to be part of something that they want to look professional, they want to look like they know what they're doing, and because it does obviously reflect on them. How can they do that in an easy way?
Okay, so first things first, sound. Always, it's the one thing which gets overlooked most of the time.
Sorry, that was the sound of the chair. I'm comfortable. I thought I would just punctuate your sound comment there.
So the first thing I always say to consider whenever you're setting up for anything is sound. Always consider sound. It's the one thing I think that gets kind of left a little bit to like, it might sound good, it might not. And for me, that approach is missing the core understanding that every film is 50% visuals, 50% sound. So look to make sure you're in an environment that is quiet, hopefully not too echoey, so you're not getting kind of reverb coming through the microphone, so it sounds, almost layered. So listen out for that nice clean audio. If I tend to find it's more in factory settings where people want to do it in their office, but if your office is next to the factory floor or the shop floor, that can be a problem. So it becomes a case of thinking, do I do it now? Do I wait till after hours to do the content? So time and sound are the first two things really to consider. After that, you want to find a nice, quiet, kind of well-lit area. So there's a very, very, very simple trick that you can do if you're ever wondering, like, oh, how do I get this light kind of nice? And that is basically, it's as old as time itself. It's called a 45-degree rule. So basically, if you're sat and the camera is in a straight line in front of you, if you've got a protractor or a protractor app, plop it in front of you, get about 45 degrees from yourself, put a light there just above your eyes, tilting downwards so you're not getting shadows on the back, just pushing them down. That's what's known as a key light in the film industry. And then just put one diagonally opposite behind you in exactly the same height and same position. And the reason you do that is it sculpts it very well.
So if someone doesn't have access to lights like that but have a ring light, I mean, I have a ring light to make Instagram reels on, does that, because I use that facing me straight ahead, is that something that you can still do, or should you have more than one? Should you put it to the side?
You can put it straight on.
There's a lot of like vloggers and stuff do that, where they've got their camera and the ring light in front of them.
Yes, but the issue that you have whenever you put anything straight on is it's what is called as flat lighting. And the problem with flat lighting, more than anything, is it's basically, it will not pick you out of the background. So if you're in, say for example, a small room, or you have very limited space and you stand next to the wall, that light will literally flatten the wall as a backdrop. There's no depth or separation of layers, which for me as a filmmaker is you've got to do. But
so can somebody who's just having a go at this, can they use any light? Can they use like a desk light? Can they use a natural light, a lamp, anything that's to hand? They haven't got to have the swanky pants sort of photo, video lights that we've got or anything, do they? They can use
any light. I can't stress that enough. Right. Any light is fine. Lamps, you name it. What is kind of known as just practicals. So they do exist. People use real lights in films. It's completely not uncommon. So if you do have any practical lighting, lamps are brilliant usually because they'll give a nice soft light. My one thing I would say is try and have lamps that emit a similar colour of light, so you don't have like an orange and a blue in the same room, because it's distracting. But again, it's what you have. It's using what you've got and using technique and knowledge to try and help shape light in the room you're in. So you use what you have. But really kind of almost doubling back before we even bring the phone into the equation is idea. What are you basically, what is the point of making the video? So many people want to just grab stuff and go, I've been told I need to make a video, whether that's from a marketing agency or an advice from anybody. Basically they go, you haven't got any video content, and it's then that mad rush to go, oh, I've got to make video, but not having any idea where to even start. So and so what I would always say is don't rush into it, because they're never going to engage with bad video. So that is again where the professionals, if you are literally like, I have no idea what to do, speak to a professional. It's always the best thing to do. But if you have that kind of idea that you're going to say, hey, I just want to do a quick piece to camera where I want to update people on the status of something like a business or a new product, or do you know what I mean? And they just want to do a quick video showcase, and that, that can be easily done with a phone, but always have what is the point of this video written somewhere in the room, so every time that you stop, you look at it and go, am I hitting that target?
Well, you still have to go through a planning process irrespective of the kit you're using, don't you?
100%.
I think that's important.
100%.
So here's a random question.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody think that the pandemic is gonna make people more willing and more able and more keen to do video, insofar as for 17, 18 months now, everybody's been on Zoom calls and Teams calls and stuff, so they're kind of used to seeing themselves. Do you think that as we unlock and as things hopefully start getting back to normal, that we're going to get people who are going to be a lot more comfortable being filmed because they've
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that from what I've seen through seeing other business people and people that we know through industry and stuff doing this, is that before the pandemic in sort of 2019, we'd be speaking to people who would not really understand the value of video, nor would they consider it maybe within their business for whatever reason that may be. It wasn't something, it was quite alien to them at the time. But then when that went from being maybe like a thing to add or invest in your business, it became a commodity during the pandemic. It went from wanting it to really needing it to speak to your customers. You couldn't go out and network and speak to people, and I saw people who, through maybe like LinkedIn connections and stuff, going live on LinkedIn, going live on Instagram, and actually realizing that when you strip away things like face-to-face networking and coffees and meetings and stuff, video really is the next thing after that, other than maybe speaking to people on the phone. So I think there's become, because of the pandemic, more of an awareness of how it is used, because people have had to use it to speak to their customers as a necessity. So hopefully after that, and people can go back to networking and go back to speaking to people in person, the value that they got through the pandemic and that they relied on for that year will hopefully carry on. I've seen people who, even though you can go out and network, even though you can now go for meetings with people, or do a talk and maybe in front of a small group of people, I have seen businesses still choosing to go live on social media, still choosing to do this. So it's whether the decision to take it a bit further and maybe get a more professional production made, whether that's an option. But I think the use of being comfortable showing your bookcase or the back of your living room or whatever it may be, and I think that's really transformed. But hopefully, there might still be a bit way to go, but I think it's getting there.
Anything else to add there? top filmmaker. Now we've established that you don't need anything but an iPhone and a desk lamp. Yeah. Is there anything you want to add?
I would always actively encourage people to get professionals to do anything important to the business. I think you can't underline that enough. In the same way that you would not get a roofer to plumb your house. Just, do you know what I mean? It's not, you can't you can't have a one size fits all approach. One of the it's so important to we are living in a very, very digitally consuming age. So every piece of video that goes out there is important, and I still don't think that's understood by so many people. So it's now becoming part and parcel of it, where the pre-production is actually so important that anybody without ever having that experience of working with a camera, go to a professional, because they can get you straight up to speed. But also you'll get to learn firsthand the interview techniques they use, watch how they interview, kind of pick up on things that they've noticed. So for example, I say, oh, I thought that was interesting, could you say that again? You might not have noticed something like that, and that might be actually the bit that everyone goes, oh, when you said that in that video, that was great. So it's those things, you know, that are really important. So always get a professional if you're in doubt or are doing a piece of video content that is important to your business. I can't stress that enough. Now, like I say, for things like interviews, pieces to camera, quick fire things, you know, you might go, oh, we've got this new thing in, keep your eyes open. I would say where iPhone filming or phone filming will become the norm for businesses is using things that are to kind of whet the appetite before you either launch something big, even if it is still in print using photos and text, or whether it's a video. I don't foresee an entire era where everything will go through a phone, but it certainly is handy for those without the budgets to invest in video. But there is kind of one quote to kind of leave it with, which it effectively boils down to that video is one of the most important parts of your business. And if you don't have a video budget within your marketing budget, you've gone wrong somewhere. And that is, you know, one of the key things that I've found has been a key takeaway for a lot of businesses.
Cool. Well, that answers our question, I believe, for this week. So last but not least, then, anything you want to plug for your side?
No, I hope it wasn't too technical. I tend to go quite technical most of the time, but that's just sheerly because there's nothing better than you know, for somebody like me is using the camera to tell stories for people, to tell, you know, whether they're individuals or businesses. Just storytelling really is such a passion of mine, and I could go on for hours, so I won't. But hopefully not too technical.
But you can find Andy on social media and also through big screen wedding films as well.
Yeah, we'll chat about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
But you know, you've got all kinds of feathers in your cap. But so the questions that what I asked Dad last time. Number one, what's your favourite film? And number two, if someone was going to play you in the movie of your life, who would it be?
Well, my favourite film ties probably between Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, because I would not be a filmmaker if that film did not exist. It was such a huge impact on my life as a teenager, and just kind of stuck with me even to this day. And it's up there next to Jaws, the film that terrified me as a child.
As someone who's scared of sharks,
but it's just a masterstroke. And who would play me in a movie is it's a good question. I mean, I think everybody in their right mind just wants John Hamm to play them.
Well, not Danny DeVito then.
I can go. Yeah, I think John Hamm could play everyone, and like all three, you know. We'd be fine with that. It was just he's that good.
So in the movie of Howell film, he is playing all of us.
All the roles.
With different outfits.
All the roles.
Okay, cool. So thank you for joining us, Andy, and I'm sure you'll be in many more episodes to come because we've got plenty of questions that need a good technical answer. So that's jolly good. Anything you want to add, Dad?
No, all good. I'm not everyone's dad, you know.
Yeah, no, just mine and my brother's. So that's it for this week. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to our podcast to catch up on all the amazing stuff we'll be talking about in the future. You can get our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, and don't forget to find us at Howell Film on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.